people's lives. Your product must be doing one of two things, hopefully both, but at least one of two. Meeting needs or solving problems. If your product is not doing either of those, you will find it very, very difficult to sell. Meeting needs and solving problems. Improve lives. Look for how you can leave people better than how you met them with your business. I wish you every success with whatever you lay your hands to do. This is Bebe Clement. Put your signature on life.
Marketing, you can have the nicest looking office in the hippest part of town. You can have great marketing material. You can have all the fancy brochures that you like. But at the end of the day, it boils down to how many customers do you have? No customers, no business. So that's what we were looking at last week. And we were looking at some of the ways in which you can increase your customers. Everybody's looking for more customers. So we're looking at how you can increase your customers. And I just want to very quickly just go over some of the things that we looked at. We looked at the obvious ones, the obvious one of family and friends. I say obvious, but we often forget that. But family and friends are a very good starting point to finding new customers. Sometimes we assume that family and friends know what we do. And sometimes they do, but often they don't. And even if they do, they often need reminding. So there's nothing wrong in reminding them about what you do. Another thing is, for those of you who are just starting out, what is even more important is that you identify what does my customer look like, and you identify that down to a T. For instance, is my product race specific? Do my clients come from a particular race? What are their age groups? Does my product appeal more to certain to one sex more than another? For instance, we looked at the statistics of this show, and this show definitely appeals more to men than women. Don't ask me why, but it does. Age group wise, what kind of age group am I looking at? What kind of language does that age group use? Those kind of things you need to be looking at to find more clients. And of course, the more obvious ones are things like social media. But social media you do have to be careful with, because people get hooked up on the whole, oh, I have 1,000 likes. I posted something and I have 1,000 likes. Or I've had 10,000 people join me. All that is nice, and particularly for stroking the ego. But most importantly, you need to keep an eye on how much of that is actually converting into clients. In other words, how much of that is putting money in my pocket? If people are just liking your post and they're not buying your product, then there's no point. Okay, so those are the kind of things that we looked at last week. So today, we are looking at something totally different. And we're looking at this as, this is kind of like a class, a financial literacy class. You know how I am. I'm really big on the whole financial literacy thing, because ignorance is not bliss, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let them lie to you. Ignorance is not bliss. It is what we don't know about money and finance and how it works that is keeping us financially where we are. And if we want to do better financially, we need to educate ourselves. So today we're going to be looking at how to increase your credit score and access more finance. Increase your credit score and access more finance. There's so much myth around the whole credit score thing. What is a credit score? What does it mean? How does it affect me? Who holds that information? All those kind of things. And I gotta be honest, I'm not a guru in this area, so one of the things that I like about this show is that I have an opportunity to bring you the dopest guests. I really do. And so it gives me great pleasure to welcome back, actually, because she's been on the show before and we had a brilliant time when she was on the show before. And so I'm really honored to have her back again. Bimbola, Osagie, are you there? If you want to say hi to the guests. Okay, we can't hear you, so I think you need to mute. Okay, there you are. Hi, everyone. We got you now.
Thanks for having me back on the show.
Okay, so for those who didn't have an opportunity to meet you the first time, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Okay, so my name is Bimbola Osagie. I'm actually a property entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Yes. I live, breathe, eat, sleep property all day, every day. So I am very passionate about property as a wealth creation vehicle. Started my property journey as far back as 2008, where I would invest every money that I had into a property, and then over the years build myself a sizable portfolio. And then more recently, 2008, I left my my job in the investment bank in the city, and now I'm a full-time property investor / developer / trainer, coach, and mentor. So I help other people to get on the property ladder, whether as a first-time buyer for your residential home, or as an investor wanting to maximize your money and make sure that your money grows and works really hard for you. I'm also a founder of an investment club called Be Your Own Bank Investment Club. So this is where a group of people come together with a minimum of £10,000 to invest in properties here in the UK. And turn around property trading, provide finance to other investors as well for a profit. So that's going really well. We're really excited about it. And in fact, the aim of that is to be the first Black-owned bank in the UK. So the small businesses and start businesses that are starting and that hardly get access to finance, hopefully in the very near future, we will be able to help. So I'm quite passionate about, creating wealth, being able to get on the property ladder as an investor. But obviously, as with everything else in life, you're going to need money. You're going to need cash. So it's important that we know how to access cash. It's important that we know how to access these funds. There is a lot of money everywhere. It's a myth to think that there is scarcity. There is an abundance of money everywhere. It's the goal really is to find out, how do I get a slice of that pie? So I'm really excited about today's topic because this is one way of accessing finance. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you. Okay, let's jump right into it. Okay, so when I was doing some research for today's program, I've got to say it was such an eye-opener for me, and I know it's going to be for our listeners today. But let's jump right into it. First of all, what is a credit score?
Okay, so I'm going to take a step back and say, what is credit?
Okay.
First of all, what is credit? And then you talk about credit score. So credit is literally a trust that you have between one party and another. So one party being the borrower and one party being the lender. So the credit is what brings about the trust element for the borrower to say, look, you can trust me to take this amount of money off you and I will pay you back over a period of time as I've promised. That's literally what credit is. It's a trust. It's it's a way of trusting between two parties. So it could be an organization and an individual. Now, a credit score is then a way or a system in which credit is being scored or accessed from what So, for example, you would have there's almost like when you're back in school, right? You have a fail, a low score, an average score, and a very high score. The higher your credit score is, the more access you have to finance, the more people want to borrow you money, and basically what it means is it's telling somebody that you are trustworthy. If your scoring is low, you're basically saying you are not to be trusted with finance, meaning you did take money at some point with an intention to pay back over a period of time and you defaulted along the way. Now we will go as we go into the show, we will talk about some of the reasons why we have low credit scoring, but that's just typically a very high level definition of what a credit is and a credit scoring is, and which also leads into credit history. So the credit is the trust.
Before we go into the credit history, if you don't mind, I just want to take a little step back because I'm still not very clear about the credit score. Yeah. Would it be safe to say that a credit score is like a digital financial footprint?
It is. It actually is a digital financial footprint. And that's a combination of several things that combine together to become the scoring. So one part of it is based on your financial footprint, but another part of it is based on if you are, for example, if you're registered in the electoral roll. So it's basically a company or an institution saying, look, this is your footprint, this is where we can find you, this is what you've been up to. That's what makes up the credit score.
Okay, That's fine. All right. So for those of you who are watching, it's important that you know that whenever you're making purchases or you're accessing credit or whatever, you are leaving a footprint that somebody or an institution can follow. Yeah. So it's important you bear that in mind, and that should inform you as to what you're spending your money on, the kind of purchases you're making, whether you're indeed in a position to make those purchases, because as Bimbola said, this whole concept is built on trust. The whole concept is built on trust. Okay, how is a credit score calculated? Because while I was reading, I found that apparently if you have 700 or more, that's pretty good. And then below that, they were analyzing it. 700 out of what? How is this calculated?
So the overall mark is 999. So the very top is 999.
Okay.
So basically, if you are a good credit score, will be anything from about 700 and something to 999. So excellent is 999 or anything above 900. And again, just like we mentioned, it's literally your footprint, how you manage your finance, how you've conducted yourself. So if you are anything from 700 and above, you're okay. But even saying that though, depending on what your scoring is, would also determine the kind of access, the kind of interest rates, for example, that you actually have access to. So even though you might have a pretty good credit score of 750, for example, you are still not you probably won't get as good a deal as someone that has 999. And the way that is scored, or the way that is calculated, is it's based on, so let's just say everybody's starting at a really good playing field, right? Mm-hmm. Person A and person B. Person A is consistent with their repayments. They are not over leveraged in terms of, they haven't overly spent every single thing on their credit. They're paying on time, they're registered, they would continue to maintain a pretty good scoring. Now, if person B, on the other hand, unfortunately missed a payment, for maybe not even due to maybe just through carelessness, they missed a payment, they're not registered, they've moved home and they haven't necessarily registered at their new home on the electoral register, their scoring starts to go down in value. And the more you do, the more you transact, if any issue could either bring down your scoring or maintain it at a good rate, or actually bring it up. So that's how the institution actually score it. There's a whole algorithm around credit scoring, which
So does that mean that anytime you're making credit purchases, you are allocated a score that then makes up this?
Yeah, at the end of each month, what the financial institutions or any of your creditors do is they submit a report, or they submit a report to the credit reference agency to say this is what's happened over the course of the month. So I don't know exactly how the scoring is done, but the science behind it is at the end of each month, it's submitted. So if you made your payment at the end of each month, that's a tick. If you haven't made your payment and it's a missed payment, that goes on as a missed payment. Now, once a missed payment comes through, automatically that's going to bring down your credit slightly. When that carries on and is persistent, it continues to bring down your credit scoring to the point where it becomes an issue for yourself. So that's how it works. So which is why it's very important that every single month we're keeping up to our payment. Now, the other thing as well is in terms of payments is say for example, we use a credit card as an example. Each credit card alone would have a minimum payment that is required. If you keep up to the minimum payment, that's good in the sense that you're ticked off as having made a payment. However, when you look at your overall, how much you've borrowed versus how much you're owing, there's not much difference. Again, that impacts your credit. So most of the time, they would advise you to make above your minimum payment, so that it actually shows that yes, you are looking to clear that debt.
Okay. And also, I think if you pay it before the date it is required, that should also have some kind of impact.
No, not necessarily. As long as payment hits before the deadline. So every credit transaction or repayment would have a deadline. So whatever date it is, if it's say the 15th of the month, if you make the payment on the 1st, that's beautiful. If you make it on the 15th, that's also good. But it's when you make it outside of the date, say for example the 16th or the 17th, that's when it becomes an issue. Now some organizations actually have a leeway. So sometimes they might give you a couple of days or maybe a couple of weeks leeway, so that as long as the payment is received within that month, that's good. However, there's also, based on that company's track record, if you're consistently paying that late, they would also have that. That may not necessarily reflect on your credit file, because as long as you made the payment on the month, that's fine. But from their perspective, if you were in a position in the future to want to secure something from them, they might look at your track record and say, no, actually, we wouldn't be happy to engage in another agreement with you.
Okay, now that leads me to my next question. Who exactly holds this information on you? And how can you see what your report looks like?
Okay, so there are 3 major agencies here in the UK, and they're called credit reference agencies. You've got the likes of Experian, Equifax. There's another one, I can't quite remember what it is right now, but the 2 main ones are Experian and Equifax. So most organizations would register with either of the 2 or both of them at the same time. So they are the reference agencies that hold everybody's record, and that record is actually available to you. So it's not a hidden data where you can't access it. In fact, you're supposed to actually go find out what they've written or what's about you. So it's available, it's accessible. You just, the way to do that is to register with those agencies with your full information, your date of birth, your previous addresses, and they will pull up anything they have on you, and then it gives you an opportunity to have a look at it, study it, challenge if you need to challenge, and we might be able to talk about that a bit more. Yeah, but it's easily accessible to everyone.
Okay, I think TransUnion is the third one.
TransUnion. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so there you have it, guys. The 3 main players that hold information on you as regards a credit report is Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So if you want to check that out, it'd be a good idea to Google them and see if you can access it. Now,
there's a particular company that would give you all of those 3 in one. So if you're looking to check your credit, rather than go to individual companies, if you go into it's called checkmyfile.co.uk.
Okay.
In the UK, it gives you access to all of the reference agencies, which is absolutely the best thing to do, because sometimes you might have a company that would register with Equifax, and some of them would report to Experian, but you actually want to know everything.
Yes.
From one.
So can you give us that name again?
Checkmyfile.co.uk.
Okay. Guys, you've got that. Checkmyfile.co.uk. You see, this is why you need to tune into this show, because you get some really good information here. So thanks for that. Now, a bit of confusion for me. The more I researched this, it almost seemed like the more you spend, the better your credit rating. Can you speak to that?
Yes, it's a conundrum. Yeah. So let's start off by the fact that if you have no credit, i.e., when we say credit, we're saying access to things like credit. So anything that you're able to access, any goods or service you're able to access without paying upfront, is a credit transaction. So when you have a credit card, when your gas bill, even gas and electricity is a credit, right? Because they allow you to use up the energy and then you pay later. Your mobile phone bill, like any kind of bill where you don't have to pay upfront, and you are trusted that once you, at the end of the month of the period, you would pay that. That's credit. Now, most people at some point or the other would have credit, but if you don't have credit, right, maybe you don't have a mobile phone, you don't pay bills in your house, you don't have a credit card, you are deemed as not having credit. Now, whilst you're not necessarily owing anyone, that in itself is bad credit, because you don't have any. So there's no track record to know that you can be trusted. Now, when you start to build your credit, i.e., you pick up a credit card here and another card there, the lenders are happy because now they can see a pattern that they can follow. However, if you choose not to engage with them, i.e. you have this credit card but you don't actually use the card, it's just there in your wallet for a rainy day that never comes to pass, again, that is not advisable because there's still nothing to track you. So what the lenders ideally would want is that you keep on having lots of credit. So you have a credit card, you have an account with your energy bill, your phone, mobile phone bills, you're building. So the more you take on credit, the more activity is shown on your credit file, the higher your scoring would go. Now they can see that, look, we can trust this woman or this man, and we can then give them more money. Which in itself is a bit, like I said, it's a conundrum, because what you don't then want to do is get to the point where you are steeped in debt in this credit because you're trying to build that you are now not able to pay or keep up with your repayment. So what we usually typically would advise is make the most of your credit, but only do it within reason, within what you can easily afford to pay back every month. Because that's another thing that is excellent for the credit file, is even if you do have you do use your credit card, for example, frequently, at the end of each month, the lender they don't really want you to pay everything back because they want to make money from the interest. However, you want to pay it back, and you want to pay back in full if you can, and by doing that, it goes to show that actually not only can you be trusted with money, you can actually be trusted to manage your money and your repayment. So that's the way around it. So you build credit by taking on more debt, but you build a good credit scoring by managing that debt.
Okay. Yeah, it's a fine line. It really is a fine line. Okay, all right. Just to say that this is a live show. The Bebe Means Business show is a live show, and it's an interactive one as well. So I want to hear your views. I had quite a few people say to me that they were going to send in some questions because this is a topic that they really need some information about. So we're going to take a short break in a moment and see if any questions have come in, which hopefully our guest will be able to help us with when we come back. But if you are minded to send in some questions, you can do that a number of ways. You can use our Twitter handle, which is @StarRadioUK. That's @StarRadioUK. Text or WhatsApp us on 07539 661 744. That number again, it's 07539 661 744. Or indeed, if you are accessing us through Facebook, just put your questions in the chat, and my producer will pass them to me and we'll answer them. But we'll be back right after this break. Don't go away.
Products must be doing one of two things, hopefully both, but at least one of two: meeting needs or solving problems. If your product is not doing either of those, you will find it very, very difficult to sell. Meeting needs and solving problems. Improve lives. Look for how you can leave people better than how you met them with your business. I wish you every success with whatever you lay your hands to do. This is Bebe Clement. Put your signature on life.
It's your girl Bebe Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, Bebe Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Star Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Get ready for this.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned into the Bebe Means Business show, and today with my special guest Bimbola Osagie, we are looking at the whole issue surrounding your credit score. Increase your credit score and increase your ability to access finance. And she's been busting some of the myths for us. Some questions have come in during the break, which we'll handle in a minute. But I do want to finish off, Bimbola, if you don't mind. I do want to finish off the whole issue of credit cards. and you very kindly explained how using your credit card can increase your credit score. Again, as always, a word of caution there. She's explained the difference between how you do that. Don't start going crazy on your credit card, because for those of you who know, you are paying reverse compound interest on your credit card, so you've got to be careful with that. But there was something I did want to discuss regarding credit cards. I read somewhere that if you decide not to use your credit card anymore, fantastic as that might be, it's not enough for you to just set them aside. You have to inform the credit card company and make sure that they take you off the books, basically, or close it down. Is that correct?
I think that's a personal choice. I don't know that that's a law or rule. I think if you have a credit card and you're not using it, obviously it doesn't help your credit anyways. So you're either better off using it or giving it back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a rule. But then I think also probably from a safety point of view as well, if you have a credit card that is active, and you're not using it, you could easily get defrauded if you were to get into someone else's hands. So you're either using it actively and you're keeping track of your spend, because typically what happens is if you're not using your credit card, you'll probably not get a statement, you're probably not checking or tracking your statements anyways. So if something bad were to happen, or if that were to get into someone else's hands, you could easily that could easily go unnoticed.
Yeah.
You're either using it or you're not.
Okay. I think also it's important in those kind of situations when you're not using your credit card to regularly check, just for the reasons that you have mentioned, just in case there's some fraudulent activity going on in your account that you may not necessarily be aware of. So you need to be checking, I'd say, every 3 months, every 6 months, just to make sure that nothing untoward is happening. Okay, so I'm going to end the credit card issue there. Let's deal with some questions, Bimbola, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We've had a question coming from Trevor. Trevor, thank you very much for sending in your question. Sorry, you didn't put your surname, so I can't mention your surname, but it is from Trevor. Trevor says, hi, Bebe. I was rejected for a loan about a year ago on the basis of a report by a credit agency. When I checked with the credit agency, it transpired that one of the utility companies had reported that I had failed to pay a utility bill. This is a bill that I disputed, and I've invited the utility company to sue me if they believe that I owe them. They haven't sued me, but rather chose to blacklist me with the credit agents. How can this be fair, and how do I challenge it? Wow.
Right. So this stuff with the energy companies is very common, and I think it's because most people don't necessarily associate energy providers and credit, because we automatically think it's just credit card loans and overdrafts. It also applies to energy providers and mobile phone bill. And I've seen a lot of cases, I've heard a lot of cases where your last bill, and I think I've also experienced this at some point, where your last bill, let's say for example in Trevor's case, you're disputing it, or maybe in other people's case you didn't even realize there was a last bill that typically comes months later, and you don't even know that there's a reason to pay or whatever. That literally affects. So number one, the first thing is it doesn't sound fair, but that's how the game is. So if you notice that that's an issue, it's best that you take it up with the energy company, and maybe perhaps what I would suggest is speak to them about this bill, the fact that you've disputed it, the fact that you're not happy with that bill. Come to some sort of agreement with them and pay whatever the agreement amount is, because you're better off getting them to take that off your report than to allow that to stay on, because it will stay on for 6 years, and you don't want that to be an issue for the next 6 years. So in most cases where there's a dispute, what you need to do is you go back to the company. You can challenge whatever it is, but then if they're not budging, come to some sort of agreement and just let that matter be closed, because ultimately it is your credit and it's your life that gets affected. That's all I can really advise on this particular one. You want to deal with it. You always want to deal with it as much as you can. And the issue and the truth of the matter is, for bigger corporations like that, if there is an issue, if there's something, over a period of time, they're willing to actually agree to a settlement, because they know that they would rather have some money back anyway. So they're always open to a settlement. So always push. if there's a dispute, always push for a settlement. Say, look, this is what I think I owe. This is whatever. Just always negotiate and settle, but definitely settle. And then once you've done that, make sure that before you get to the point of settlement, that they put it in writing that they will amend your credit report if you make that payment, so that you're not just making this payment and nothing happens. They need to amend your credit report, and just get that in writing, and hopefully they'll do that. They'll keep to their words.
Okay, that last bit is very important. That last bit is very important. Get it in writing that as part of your willingness or agreement to settle this debt or to come to some kind of agreement in relation to the debt, they will remove this from your record. That's really, really important. Okay, Trevor, I hope that answered your question. I have another question here. It says, this is from David. Nobody's put their surname today. Okay, all right then. This is from David. David says, I applied for a credit card from Ocean Finance, but was refused on the grounds of information provided by a credit rating agency. But they did not give me the name of the agency. How do I find out which credit rating agency they were referring to and what information that they have on me? I think you kind of answered that in the beginning, but for those who are just joining, please do it again.
Just joining. There's so there are three main credit agencies in the UK: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Experian and Equifax are the two most popular ones, but nonetheless, there's a third one. Now, you want to check with every single one of them what they have on you. So I suggested, if you wanted to, you can either go into three individual companies to register. And typically they would give, I think they do a free report for the first, first few days, or maybe just with £1 or £2, you can get access to your credit report. But what I recommend is to do all three in one sweep. So there's a site called www.checkmyfile.co.uk. They would check all three companies all at the same time. Now, once you register, and it's very easy to register, you just have your full name, date of birth, and previous addresses. Once you put all of that information in, you can get access to your report immediately. And then when you do, by going through every single one of them, you will definitely find out which of those three Ocean Finance has the Ocean Finance application on there. You can find, and you can have a better look into your credit file to see exactly what the issue is. But it's very important that you check all three.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. This is an interesting question, and this is from Tolu. Tolu says, thank you once again for a wonderful and informative program. I'd like to ask your guest if a criminal record has any bearing on credit rating. I had a conviction for assault 3 years ago and was given community service. Would that affect my credit rating? That's an important question, actually.
Yeah, that's a very good question. No, it's not. It's not going to be on your credit report, because your credit report is your financial. It's a financial footprint. Well, unless, of course, the reason for your criminal record, your criminal report, your criminal charges is financial fraud. Now that's a whole different ballgame. But in this particular case, totally no, it wouldn't. It shouldn't be on your credit file. But again, like we said earlier, the best thing for you is to check it. The best thing for you is to get a hold of your credit report. Can I just use this opportunity as well to just encourage everyone to, I think it's one of those things that you really need to, a lot of people are scared about what they're going to find on their credit report. And, and I suppose it's a natural fear, especially if things haven't necessarily been the best in the last few, period. However, not knowing is worse.
Yeah.
It's better you know what you're dealing with, and then you can deal with it head on. I was speaking to someone at the weekend, actually, and we were talking about this same issue about credit. And it was something where they had an issue, they had an issue so many years back. And because of that, they've been quite apprehensive about their credit reports, which naturally I would, I cannot get that. And then it was only at the weekend we were talking about it, and I said, do you know, and then I got a bit more detail about what was going on. And this was something that happened so many years ago. And I was saying to the person, have you checked? And they said no. And I'm like, you need to check, because perhaps there's no longer an issue, because like I said, they will keep they will keep any record for 6 years. So imagine if something happened 10 years ago that's made you really apprehensive about your credit, but you failed to check. Who knows? Maybe 4 years back, you could have been in a better state. You could have done so much more. So rather than sit back and worry about what could be in your credit, I think it's the brave thing to do is go and check it out, see it for yourself. And then once you see what's on there, then you can start to make amends and start to build it up again. And then you'll probably find things that perhaps shouldn't have been on your credit file, to which you can then dispute. You might find things that you didn't realize had been on your credit file, maybe like in the other guy's experience of an issue with an energy company that you could actually go back and settle. Or you might find actually, you've got good credit rating, you just haven't utilized your credit. So it's always good to check. It's always good to know what's on there.
Yeah. Also, in regards to that 6-year period, another thing about it is the further away, if you've had some kind of negative credit or you've some bad credit, the further away you are from that credit, the less important it becomes. So let's say within that 6-year period, the first year you'd really messed up, but over the last 4 years you've not defaulted in any way, then that initial year becomes less important in making decisions regarding your financial credit worthiness in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, we all live in the real world, right? We all go through difficulties and challenges in life, and again, that's something. I think this is also a myth around credit. It's not. People tend to associate. There's a stigma attached to low credit rating, and sometimes it's actually it shouldn't be, because life is full of challenges. Life is full of ups and downs. Someone that is balling and having a great time financially today could find themselves in a really difficult situation in a year's time. So the main thing is, if you find yourself in that situation, now that try your possible best to keep up with your payment, or at least have a conversation with your creditors. And if you find that you're in a place where you really can't do that, and you've had a bad credit or whatever, it's fine. There is always a time of redemption. There is always, as long as you've been keeping up with your payment in recent times, the lenders could take could look at you favorably. And then also, it's also to put it out there that just because you have a low credit score, it doesn't mean that you wouldn't or you cannot access funding. The difference is you might not get the best interest rate. So if I come in with my 999 credit scoring, I probably typically or currently the Bank of England rate is 0.1, is 0. Quite low. So I might be able to get the really low interest rate and benefit from the low interest rates. Someone with a 600 or 750 credit rating would still be able to access credit, but they might get it at 3% or 2%. But we're still able to access finance, and that's what it's about. So it's not all bad news. But the main thing of the lesson is just being disciplined with our finances, being mindful of the footprint that we're leaving behind, and doing something to correct that. So in my role as a property investor and as a landlord, it hurts me so much when I find I put up a property for rent, and several people have come along, suitable candidates, family people, good working people, and so on and so forth. And I'm, they're excited about this property. I'm excited about having them come on, and then the next thing is, okay, well, everything is fine. We're going to do a credit check. We're going to do the usual credit check, and everything falls apart. And I'm like, oh my God, like. When he's a younger person, you might think, okay, well, they're still a bit young, they're still trying to get their feet, they're probably not as disciplined and so on. But when you find older people with family and they're unable to get even a rental property, let alone go as far as getting a mortgage, it hurts to see that situation. So, this is a really good session, Bebe, for bringing awareness to people. It's not always the worst thing, but you must be diligent, you must be disciplined with your finances, you must know this thing so that we can make amends.
It's fine. Yep. Thank you for that. Now, I have a personal question, actually. I had my purse stolen a little while ago, and fraudsters went on a shopping spree on my debit card. Does that affect my credit score? Although the bank investigated and they understood it wasn't me, my purse had been stolen. But does that affect my credit score?
Well, it shouldn't, unless of course they've done something and obviously it wasn't, the banks haven't necessarily reversed that, and you have to make that payment and you haven't made that payment, but otherwise it shouldn't. Just the fact that your card was stolen or there's a fraudulent activity on your account does not affect your credit scoring.
Okay. Let's go very, very, very quickly onto mortgages. We spoke briefly about that just now. I understand that your credit score can save you a lot of money, obviously, in your borrowing, whatever the borrowing endeavor is. So is it possible for you and I to take out the same mortgage and I'd be paying a higher rate than you based on my credit score?
Oh, definitely.
You touched on that, but
yeah, touched on that. Yeah, definitely.
It is possible. Okay. All right, cool. Now, again, just so that we educate our viewers as to how this whole thing works, I had a situation a few years ago whereby I bought a new pair of glasses. And normally when I buy things in personal stuff, I just pay in cash. But because they were a bit expensive, and so the lady just said to me, why don't you pay by direct debit? And to be honest, I've never bought anything and paid by direct debit before, but I thought, why not, So I said, okay, yeah, I'll pay by direct debit. Now, not being financially literate in that area, and this is why I say ignorance is not bliss, we have to arm ourselves with knowledge. I assumed, well, this is my money, so my money is going direct to, it was Vision Express, going direct to Vision Express, so it's not a problem. What I didn't realize, and I later discovered, was that actually what happens in those kind of situations, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my understanding, is that a credit company stumps up the money up front, and I'm actually repaying the credit company. Is that correct, first of all, before I go on?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so for our viewers or our listeners, you need to know that when you think it is your money, which was what I thought, well, it's my money and it's just going direct to Vision Express, that was not what was happening. Now, the reason, at the time, it wasn't an issue. The reason why it then became significant was a little while later, I was trying to access some finance. I think I was trying to remortgage or something like that on a property. And they brought out my report, and that had marked me down significantly. And I was quite surprised about that because I had no understanding that was how it worked. But that had affected it. So could you give a little bit of advice as regards those kind of transactions?
Okay, I'm surprised that affected you. I'm surprised about that actually, because ultimately it's credit. So whether you're paying it directly to Vision Express or you're paying it directly to this company, it shouldn't really be an issue as long as the repayments are going out. So without knowing exactly the detail, any further detail, it's quite hard to say why that was an issue. With most companies, almost like when you go and buy when you go and buy a car, and you're going to pay it month after month, a company or a bank will cough up the money and pay to the dealer, and then you're paying back the bank the monthly payment plus the interest. So that's typically how such things happen, where somebody else will pay upfront for you and then you're then paying them. But then as long as you're keeping up with the repayments, as long as you know the terms, there aren't any hidden agenda by that company, it shouldn't really be an issue. So yeah, I'm quite surprised that affected you.
I was surprised as well. I was like, so kind of thing, but they said yes, it had a bearing. So anyway, that was that. But I just thought I'd share that just so that other people know how these things work when they go into this kind of agreements.
Yeah.
All right. This is a really good show. I'm really pleased that we did this actually. What happens if the information they hold on you is wrong or outdated?
Yes, that's a really good one. So and that's why we all need to check, because you're the only one that would know that it's a wrong information. So when it's wrong or it's out of date, it's your responsibility to have that corrected. So in each of the credit reference agency, one of the things on your credit file is there's a bit in there that covers correction. They call it notice of correction. So if you notice anything in your credit file that doesn't seem accurate, that you feel like you need to challenge, you have the space to literally write up a whole essay, if you must, about the issue, and the credit reference agency would then go ahead and investigate the matter on your behalf. And if they find that whatever their findings are, they will let you know. And if it so happens that yes, you were right, this shouldn't have been, the whole whatever that was would be corrected on your credit file, and everything will be hunky dory. yes, so there are opportunities to make corrections and make amendments.
Okay. Now, sometimes you do have problems in doing so. So if that is the case, there is what we call a financial ombudsman service, and they can assist where there are disputes. For instance, in the question of, I think it was Trevor, where the utility company is disputing your version of events and stuff like that. If you get into what's the word, an impasse with a company, you can ask for the assistance of the Financial Ombudsman Service. They're free, and I think after this show, my producer will put their contact details on the banner so that you can access them. So it's important that you know that they don't have the last say just because you're in dispute. You don't have to accept it just because they're in dispute, because sometimes it can be intimidating. You're coming against someone like BT or British Gas or something like that. It can be very intimidating. Yeah. But there is assistance out there, so don't just sit there and suffer and let someone mess up your credit unnecessarily. There is assistance out there.
Yeah. Okay, so you can actually start with making a complaint to the company first. And if that's not dealt with appropriately, then you take that next step. But I have made complaints as well myself to credit card companies, or mortgages. In fact, I remember last year at the beginning of COVID when we could take payment holidays, and I remember the mortgage company saying, yes, payment holiday starts on this date, and then that's what we believed that was. And then it so happened that few months down the line, they were like, no, actually, there's one payment outstanding. So I had to dispute that, because I had evidence to show. So we went back and forth, but eventually they it was resolved, and then I was duly compensated as well. So never be too scared to challenge a company. Obviously, if it's something that is well within your, if something that you totally disagree with, challenge them. Hopefully they would come to their senses, because they do have an investigation in every company. And then obviously if that doesn't work, then go as far as the ombudsman.
Yeah, I think that's also important in consideration of the period that we're in. All these COVID holidays.
Yes.
Yeah. That is quite important. Yes. Okay. All right. So how do we improve our credit score? Let me kick off with that one. One, obviously, pay your bills on time. I think that would the obvious one. With 6 months
on direct debit.
Yeah. 6 months of continuous on-time payments does bring a noticeable difference to your credit report.
It does.
Do you want to suggest some other ways in which we can improve our credit score?
Yeah, so first thing first, find out that you are definitely on the electoral roll wherever you're living in. Because if you're not, that's a big impact. So check that out, especially for people that move houses. Just make sure that you are registered. Then, of course, keep up your repayments. If you need to, it's advisable to put it on direct debit. And the reason for the direct debit, so that at least you don't have to remember, it comes out of your account. But if you're not on direct debit, just make it a point that you know when the deadline is and you make that payment before the deadline, or at least on the day, making sure that it clears by that date. So keep up your repayments, put it on direct debit, be registered electoral roll, check your actual report and check it consistently as well, especially if you are in a place or in a position where you're going to need to access funding soon. So don't wait till when it's time. So if you know you're preparing for a mortgage, or you started a business and your business is going to need funding in a couple of months down the line, start to check your credit periodically so you know exactly what's on there, so you can spot any issue immediately. If you have any dispute with any company, definitely don't bury your head in the sand. Speak to them, call them, tell them what's going on. If you're having financial difficulty, tell them you're having financial difficulty. It's even, not that we wish that on anyone, but in this period where we are in, I think everyone is more understanding now. So if you're in this period and you're having financial difficulty, call, tell them what the issue is. Agree to pay something. Yes. I think that's also quite key.
That's the important thing, yes.
Than not pay things at all. Agree to make a payment. Have a payment plan in place so that you can actually have a plan to clear up your debt. So those are things that you can do. And then, of course, if you're someone that has no credit at all, get yourself a credit card. Get yourself a credit card. And when you do get yourself a credit card, use your credit card to purchase things that you ordinarily will pay cash for. You know, so your grocery, your travel tickets, whatever it is, your day-to-day stuff. Use your credit card and then pay back immediately. You spend that, transfer the money from your debit into your credit. So use your credit so that it boosts up your credit scoring, and obviously just be diligent in the ones that you have and pick up some more, but be very disciplined. I think ultimately everything boils down to discipline. Be disciplined, because credit is so important. And I think that for a lot of people from the black, I'll just say black, I don't want to say ethnic minority, I don't want to group it all in, you know, for most of us that have come from Africa, where there is credit isn't an issue, it's not a thing in Africa. It's a cash-based society, you know. We're very much into paying in cash and carrying cash everywhere. In the Western community, it's not cash, it's credit. Credit plays a major part. So let us get into that same discipline of, look, it's all credit now. Put your cash in your bank account. Use your credit card and then transfer the cash from your debit card account, your current account, into the credit card account. Yeah, so utilize your credit.
Okay, so just to remind our viewers that we're talking about how to improve your credit score. We're not talking about a way of living. Again, also the very important part, or the very important aspect, that if you do not have the discipline for it, don't go there. I don't want to hear it was on Bebe Clement show that we were encouraged to go get credit cards and live it up, and now we're in debt. So yes, so there is a slight disclaimer to that. But also another way in which you can improve your credit score is, if you already have credit cards, ask for a credit increase. Yeah. That also helps as well. Ask for a credit increase. Again, the disclaimer about your whole disciplined lifestyle, I've got to put that in there. And then try and reduce your debt. If you've got savings that you can afford to use to reduce debt, then do that. Reduce your debt. Or as Bimbola has said, negotiate with your lenders and make it a conditional settlement that the default is wiped off your credit report. Very, very important, that you're not just paying for the sake of paying and it stays on your record, but that part of your settlement agreement is that they will wipe it off your credit report. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much. I hope you found that useful. I can't honestly say that I feel so much better now with all the information that you've given. Bimbola, I can't thank you enough. It has been priceless. You've been educated. You've shared your knowledge. It's been really, really good. Thank you so much for coming on the show again. It's always a pleasure to see you and to have you. Have you got any contact details that our listeners can contact you if they need to?
Yes, I do. I can be contacted by email. My email address is bimbola@idwellproperties.com, which is spelled IDWELL properties.com. I'm also on Instagram at Bimbola Osagie. Instagram at Bimbola Osagie. So yeah, do contact me if you need further advice. And I think, ultimately the point of today's session really is to increase your credit scoring so that you can access funding. The ultimate goal is that you can access funding and leverage of the bank's money, which is a good thing for a business, for personal wealth creation, for buying properties. So let's do it, guys.
Let's do it. I like that. Let's do it. Okay, guys, once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to be here same time next week with another interesting and exciting show. Don't miss it. And I always say, don't let life dictate to you. Write your signature on life. Bye-bye.
It's a good thing for a business, for